to and very easily pick it up. As a matter of fact, a fellow author at my publisher is General Hugh Shelton. His book is just out, and he actually talks about the existence and success of Able Danger in on page 280, 283. So right there's a clue. The next big clue that people have talked about in a little bit is the book called Horse Soldiers, where General Jeffrey Lambert talks about the fact that not only did we discover Mohamed Atta as part of Able Danger, that he was briefed on, he admits this, he was the guy who prohibited me from moving the information to the FBI relating to the 9/11 terrorists. And then most damning, I think, was a Fox News thing, which was done recently, I think within the last 2 weeks, relating to the fact that they got a hold of the DOD Inspector General report, God bless him for getting a copy that was unredacted, which means they could go out and talk to the actual individuals. The DOD IG had tried to hide the individuals by basically coding everybody, which made it, kind of a gobbledygook, and you really couldn't make heads nor tails of who said what. And I think they did it for a reason. They used the Privacy Act as an excuse, but I think clearly their intention was something different. Well, anyway, they got a copy of the unredacted report with the names. And, of course, the first thing any good investigative organization is going to do is go back and check. And that's what they did. They went back and re-interviewed folks and showed these folks their testimony. The interview results, basically the summary of what was attributed to them. And I think everybody they talked to said, that's not what I said. That's not remotely what I said. And oh, by the way, they left out key information to include the fact that in one instance, one of the witnesses talked about the fact that she was the one who discovered the Mohamed Atta photo. So it's kind of like, those are kind of big facts, and why would you leave those out if not for the fact that you had a narrative you wanted to say that that any facts counter to that narrative would be deleted. So yeah, I think your listeners can go check for themselves. A lot of this is coming out now, and I think one of the grand ironies in all this, Alex, is DOD right before that story on the DOD IG report came out, the DOD spokesman said they stand by the report. So you got to ask yourself what's going on if they still stand by a report which has clearly been proven to be less than accurate. And why would they be standing by an inaccurate report if not for some reason?
Well, Colonel, in a nutshell, for new listeners, they've heard about Able Danger, they've heard about Colonel Shaffer, but they heard about your book being suppressed, but they're, what's the bottom line of the story? And correct me if I'm wrong, it's that elements of the Army, headed up by you and others, knew the attacks were coming, knew who the people were, wanted to take them out, and you were blocked from doing that. And some of that came out at the time. Army's angry, colonels are angry. They had bin Laden and Atta in their sights. They were told to stand down. And then the media spun it, well, it was a turf battle. The CIA and private contractors, weren't sharing information, or they wanted to be able to, be the ones that gave the green light, kind of like it's branches of the regular armed services fighting with each other. But, I mean, in a nutshell, boil down what Able Danger was doing, as much as you can say, and what the book gets into on that subject.
Well, let me get into it. Able Danger was essentially a pre-9/11 designed in the 99 time frame to be an offensive, and this is very critical for your listeners to understand. This was an offensive capability. So often in the Department of Defense, we defend things. This was something meant to be something we could go out and take proactive action, and that's the key here, to go after global terrorism, and the primary focus was Al-Qaeda. That's very clear what the objective was. Within the context of that, then, we started doing, and I can't get into the specific operational objectives, but I can say that the data mining thing is but one aspect of it. And the data mining thing, while crucial and has become the public face of it, there is a lot more to it than that still cannot be talked about for any number of reasons. But they do relate to the fact that the idea was to go after these guys offensively. And within the ramp up, any good operation, you have a period of time you're trying to do planning, you're trying to put things together. The ramp up portion included the data mining effort, which was to map Al-Qaeda. And Alex, there was some turf battles, and this is one of those things that recently Michael Schroyer and I were on a show together, and I think he and I publicly disagree about specific operational issues because I think there was competition. But the one thing I think he and I both agreed on is that the aftermath of whatever you want to call happened, there was no intention of taking information from him or me to try to put the pieces back together. With that said, let me continue on the Able Danger issue. Able Danger then was was created. We put essentially a blue ribbon team together. General Peter Schoonmaker, Commander of Special Operations Command, was really the protector of it. And the idea was to be prepared on call to go after Al-Qaeda and not to interfere with what Alex Station, and there's been a great deal of discussion, public discussion about Alex Station, Alex Base, and what they did to target bin Laden for covert action. We were not going after bin Laden. We were going after the infrastructure, looking at elements of that infrastructure for purposes of understanding it primarily, and then at some appropriate time using a variety of techniques and procedures to do something to degrade it, to make it less effective than it might be. And that's where the mystery deepens, by the fact that we had continued to work until essentially January of 2001, at which time everything stops. There was a briefing to General Hugh Shelton. This was made public, and then that's where the trail kind of ends.
So you were blocked, bottom line, from frustrating Al-Qaeda.
That's a great summary. Yes, that's essentially the bottom line of what happened. Yes. Okay,
let's get to the heart of this. I'm sure you know about Sybil Edmonds, FBI translator. She's broken her gag order in court. Headline: CIA in control of Al-Qaeda up until day of 9/11. She's listening to people inside our government talking to Al-Qaeda leadership, and you see that and you think this woman has no reason to lie. Then we have this Fox News headline yesterday: exclusive Al-Qaeda leader dined at Pentagon just months after 9/11. Anwar al-Awlaki, he's the guy reportedly behind the Fort Hood nut. He's the guy behind the underwear dud. He's the guy behind the Times Square, we're told. He's always in contact. And then the CIA for 2 years knows that he's talking to this Army officer, the psychiatrist.
Right.
And I mean, this is amazing. What do you say to that?
Well, this is where you and I may disagree. I don't know. I'm trying to keep my faith in the government as best I can, and I from my own personal experience, I've seen huge incompetence, and I know that a lot of folks think there may be something more to that. I honestly don't know. I'll say this: the only way we're going to get to the bottom of anything relating to Anwar al-Awlaki, the relationship between he and the Department of Defense, and frankly the FBI. The FBI at one point in time, if you check the record of Fox News' reporting on this, they actually canceled an arrest warrant for him. He was here illegally by the fact that there was a warrant out for his arrest because he fraudulently came to the United States as a foreign student and had his college paid for.
Well, it's the same thing with the SWAT, the supposed mastermind of 7/7, BBC headline: a SWAT MI6 protected after attacks. I mean, here you've got somebody having dinner in a big meeting with the Secretary of the Army, who's a supposed college student who the news is already saying is involved in 9/11. But if I try to get into the Pentagon, I'm not going to be able to meet with a sergeant. I mean, this is amazing.
And your point is well taken. On my Facebook page, I posted the very thing you're talking about regarding the dining, and people went wild over it. I mean, it's very clearly something people are concerned and should be concerned about. And this goes back to the original point of why you and I are talking here today. I think there's a narrative out there, no matter what is behind it, there is a narrative which people are dissuaded from pursuing. And that is the narrative of truth, trying to find out what exactly happened. There's this alternate history that's been put forward by the 9/11 Commission, which clearly states, and their bottom line is 9/11 was not preventable, and we just have to accept that fact. Well, I argue that fact to the point of being blue in the face. I think that is just flat out.
Well, they started with the preset statement that this was not preventable, and we're not going to look at how this happened. We're going to look at what we should do, and the answer is a police state.
Well, and to back you up on that a little bit here too, just look at what happened over the last 2 days, Alex, with Leon Panetta over at CIA, and tragically there was 7 CIA officers and 2 guards lost last year at Camp Chapman, and the answer there, and I'm just baffled by this, is Leon Panetta's comments as director of CIA. Well, mistakes were made, but we're not going to fire anybody. So, you got to ask yourself, why would people like me get fired over, trivial allegations which didn't stand up to any legal process, that I'd actually lose my clearance and my job over, while others who, literally allow tragedies to happen where loss of life are the prime outcome and nothing ever happens bad. I'm fascinated by the disparity of the standards within our own government.
Well, remember the record up until that time in 2001, the record FBI bonuses were given to the specific leadership that blocked all of the good FBI people who were on the hijackers nationwide.
Right. And I think that's a point well taken. And I'd like your listeners to understand that there are still good people in the government. It's just that they are often ridiculed, set aside, limited, they're put in places of limited scope because of the fact that people like me like stirring trouble up. And trouble to them is just getting your job done.
Well, Colonel Shaffer, I mean, look,
yeah.
I've got a lot of family who's been in the Army. And almost anyone I've talked to who's been in the Army in my family, the CIA tried to recruit him. And one of them was recruited and got out of it because he just says it was completely criminal stuff inside the U.S., drugs, you name it, in Chicago. And, the CIA is constantly getting caught with airplanes crashing full of cocaine. I mean, my whole issue is we know the government's got a lot of good people in it on the light side, but you've got the dark side that basically operates as a mafia. And, there needs to be an investigation of why one of the top al-Qaeda masterminds, the government tells us, Anwar al-Awlaki, is hanging out with the top brass 2 months after 9/11. I mean, that's a big deal.
And I think there needs to be an entire relook, at least in the defense side of the very issue. I mean, I support a lot of folks that you and I both have friends on Facebook. They have all called for a new investigation. I support that. But if nothing else, we've got to call into account for these actions you just mentioned. I mean, why on earth would you have done this? There's other things regarding al-Awlaki which are still very peculiar. I'll say that without getting into something too dramatic, as well as the 9/11 issues regarding Able Danger. I mean, it's one of those situations where, it's very clear that I hit a sore spot again by merely putting, and your listeners, I hope they will go out and pick the book up at some point, Dark Heart, by the fact that I go through in painful detail to give the reader a good understanding of what happened in that room when I mentioned Able Danger to Dr. Philip Zelikow. And Alex, I hope you understand, I went in there with as many facts that could be verified as possible so that he could leave that room and go back to the United States and pursue getting the document, getting the information necessary. And, of course, one of the big mysteries, and this was something I will talk about because I had to threaten the DOD editors when we went through my book again in early September, that they actually tried to pull a paragraph out where I talk about the fact that the Defense Intelligence Agency allowed my 9/11 Able Danger documents to go missing. And I had to threaten them. I said, look, I'm not standing. This is it. You can pull a lot of crap out, but this is the deal. The moment you start pulling information out, which relates directly to my congressional testimony, you may do that, but you will lose by the fact that I will just stick a copy of my testimony in the back of the book and people will still see it. So you've got to wonder why, we're talking about information which in some cases is over 10 years old. The disclosure was made in 2003. Why would they be interested in redacting information relating to that meeting if they're not concerned about it? So
for those that don't know, and it's all in the book, Dark Heart, but tell us, what did Zelikow, what did you say to him about Able Danger that freaked him out?
Well, it was, we were all in this room. This is October 2003 in a combat zone. And Zelikow, Dr. Zelikow and three other of his staff were actually at Bagram doing kind of a whirlwind tour of the combat zone, trying to find people who had pre-9/11 intelligence that had not been previously provided to them. Essentially, I think it was a very wise move to go out and just kind of, go out into the bush and see what you find from knocking some rocks over. With that said, I don't think they really wanted to